Amongst all the confusion in this world, it's hardly surprising that a lot of us feel lonely and isolated. So this info reel is going to be about 4 ways, that's 4 ways to bust ourselves out of that feeling of isolation and loneliness. But before we do that, watch this. Last time I made an info reel, it was all about sharing your story. And when I was thinking about it afterwards, I thought that one very, very important factor about sharing your story is the ability to actually get out of yourself and to be able to express your feelings, share your story about what's happened to you. And it's doing it with people. So this made me think about the opposite of that, the opposite being people feeling isolated and lonely and trapped within themselves. It doesn't have to be alone in the physical sense, that a lot of the time people think of loneliness as somebody in a room on their own, not communicating with the outside world. I mean, this could be for young people, this could be for old people, this could be for absolutely anyone. But also, loneliness is about people feeling that entrapment within themselves when they're in other people's company, when they're in relationships, when they're with other people. And a lot of the time, people don't understand that sense of loneliness. Mainly because they think it's something which is indulgent. That it's a luxury in some ways. Because why are you feeling lonely? You're a sociable person, you're married, you have relationships, you have children, you have friends, you may even have celebrity, you may be very, very successful in what you're doing, but for some reason there's that hole within you that makes you feel apart from everyone else. It doesn't have to be like an addiction, it doesn't have to be obsessive behaviour or compulsive behaviour, it's just that there's something that you feel apart from everyone else. How many of you feel like that? And how many of you feel that you shouldn't be feeling lonely, isolated from your loved ones, from your work colleagues, from your friends? What is it that makes you sit with people, say when you're socializing in a pub or in a club or in a restaurant, and you just don't feel a part of everyone else, you don't feel a part of the conversation? Feeling lonely locks you in. It's like locked in syndrome. It's an ever decreasing circle of entrapment, and a lot of the time it's self-imposed. You get locked into your thoughts, locked into your problems. Everything becomes heightened. Everything you don't like about yourself, everything that you don't like about people, everything that you don't like about your life, everything you don't like about things get blown up out of proportion. And what happens is that you become so involved in this thinking, these horrible negative thoughts, that you become dictated to by this inner perspective. You have no objectivity, you can't see anything else other than what's going on inside you. And it's like you're travelling within you, like if you were trapped in Wikipedia, and you're just clicking all the time on the next blue link and the next blue link to find out what the next blue link is saying, and you just get further and further and further away from yourself, but more deeper into yourself, and you just can't dig yourself out. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who feel lonely, who feel isolated, whether you think it's because you're the person who can't reach out or other people aren't reaching out to you. I'm sure that you feel very, very lost. And it's a downward spiral. It's self-destructive. Because in the end, and you may not like to hear this, but in the end, it has a lot to do with self-pity. You feel sorry for yourself. It's regressive. The pain takes you further and further down until you become paralyzed. Paralyzed with your own thoughts, your own emotions that don't go anywhere because you can't express them. You're only expressing them to yourself. And it's like, if you can imagine, it's like self-harming, but without cutting, without burning, without drinking, without taking substances. It's a self-harming because you start to hate yourself. You start to loathe yourself. You dislike everything about yourself. And you become emotionally and spiritually embittered. But it doesn't have to be like that. No, it doesn't have to be like that. So I'm going to be talking about how you can start getting yourself out of being isolated, of feeling lonely. Hope you enjoy it. So, what would be the first thing we need to do in order to break away from ourselves, to break free of this very real loneliness or a sense of loneliness that we have? Well, like everything, the first thing to do would be to admit that you're lonely. I mean, how many times have you actually been in a position of wanting to talk to a friend or just thinking about it yourself, but something has been stopping you from admitting that you're lonely? And what are the reasons why you felt like that? Why were you just on the brink of telling somebody how lonely you feel, but in the end you stopped yourself? What was it that made you stop yourself? So the first thing we need to do, like any issue, like any problem that we may be having, is to admit that we are so lonely. So once we make this admission, it will lead to the next steps to empower ourselves to break away from who we are and what's going on. The second thing to do is to embrace the idea that there are people out there. There is a world out there. And there are people out there who want to help you. There are millions and millions of people who feel lonely, who are just like us, who are just like you. There's so many websites, there's so many groups, self-help groups, that are people putting themselves in positions of, one, getting out of their own feeling of entrapment, getting out of their own sense of isolation, to help not only themselves, but to help people like us. It's all out there. There are thousands of websites, blogs, community groups, thousands of avenues out there in the world, outside your front door. People that want to help and people who are in a position of helping. It's just about us taking that step outside our front door, outside of ourselves. Because it's all about not only changing our environment, but it's also changing what's within us, our inner feelings, our inner thoughts, our inner self, our state, in order to open ourselves out, to want to climb out of ourselves, to want to be able to step over that threshold that is our own front door. So we need to be able to do that. And one of the ways of doing that is to reach out and ask for help. It's also about us using our own interests in order to expand our horizons. It could be hobbies, it could be anything you're passionate about. it's very important that we find ways to actually share our interests, share our passion with other people. And that's not just gaming or playing games, but it's actually using our interests to meet other people and be part of a community that shares your interests and your passions as well. Indulge in something new. Do something that you've never done before. That could be, going on holiday with people. That could be actually thinking about buying a pet. And that's not as, superficial as it sounds. A dog, a cat, anything that actually interacts with you. So maybe not fish, or something like that, but something that actually interacts with you and needs you. Exercise. Going out to the gym, not just running around the street on your own, but actually meeting people at a gym or exercise classes. All of these things take you out, not only of your home environment, but take you out of your inner environment. The third step is, how do we separate fact from fiction? Because I'll see if I can explain it this way. A lot of the time, when we're alone, or when we have that sense and that feeling of loneliness, we have all of these negative thoughts going on in our head. And these negative thoughts generate negative emotions. And a lot of the time, we're actually thinking negative things about other people and about our situation. And if you don't mind me saying, quite often we're feeling very sorry for ourselves. But how much of that is actually true? Because a lot of the time our thoughts go into wild places. We go into dimensions of fantasy. Because a lot of the time we're thinking about what other people are thinking about us. We're so self-conscious all the time, no matter where we are, whether we're walking along the street, whether we're going down escalators in the tube station. Everything is about us and this negative, stinky thinking. And I'd like to ask you, how much of that is actually really true? How much of what we're thinking is going on, or is it supposition, an assumption, and the way that we want people to be thinking? This is how we want it to be, to justify what we're thinking and feeling. We have to be able to separate the fiction from fact, or as I say, from the faction. Because in the end, what it really is going on is a lot better than what we think. People aren't thinking about us. People aren't actually think what we think they're thinking. And things aren't happening the way that we think that they're happening. It's all skewed by our emotions and by our stinky thinking, our negativity. We've got to change it all, because what happens in the real world, the fact of our life, is actually the positive side of things and not the negative. And the last thing is, do something for someone else. This will most certainly take you out of yourself if you're doing something for someone else. It could be a friend. How many times have you been in a position whereby you could have helped somebody, but you held yourself back? How many times have you felt, in fact, a little bit disappointed with yourself because you didn't help anyone? So you're breaking away from that element of selfishness which you have, or which you can have, because of your loneliness. A lot of the time people don't like hearing this, but I've been there. I know what it's like, and I had to admit, I could not deny anymore that what I was putting myself through was very selfish. And because it was selfish, I lacked that certain amount of gratitude and compassion and generosity for other people. It wasn't until I started working in the caring professions, it made me put my problems, what I was experiencing, into perspective. Now, that's not to say that I was downplaying my depression, I was downplaying my loneliness, but knowing that other people are out there who I could help, in fact, helped me put my own feelings and what I was going through into perspective. And it helped me find avenues and find ways in order to break away from myself. So, that's it for the moment. This is part 1. Part 2 is going to be coming up very soon. I hope you've managed to gain a lot from this. And the second part of our info reels concerning breaking away from ourselves will be about my story. How loneliness actually crippled me amongst many other things. How it forced me to feel so apart from everyone and everything that it took me a long, long time in order to step over my own threshold, and how my life has improved so much by breaking away from that self-imposed prison. And also 3 more ways, yes, that's 3 more ways in which we can break away from ourselves. So if you like our info reel so far, watch the second part, soon to be coming, and hit that subscription below. And do remember that if you want to learn now, you need to know how. Bye bye for now.